Most gardeners look at a bag of fertilizer and see the answer. The numbers on the label, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, feel like science. Feel like control. You pour it in, the plants respond, and for a season, maybe two, everything looks fine. So you buy another bag. And somewhere along the way, buying the bag stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like gardening itself. But here is what nobody tells you at the garden center. The soil under the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the soil that fed entire civilizations for 5,000 uninterrupted years, never saw a single synthetic input. Not one. And yet those fields produced wheat, barley, lentils, and onions in volumes that sustain millions of people across generations that modern agriculture, with all its chemistry, has never surpassed in long-term soil productivity. The Mesopotamian farmer did not feed a bag to the soil. He fed the soil itself. And the soil fed everything else. Here is what the fertilizer industry does not advertise. When synthetic nitrogen entered agriculture at industrial scale in the mid-20th century, it did not improve on what traditional soil systems were already doing. It replaced them. Synthetic inputs short-circuit the biological relationships, the fungal networks, the bacterial communities, the mineral cycling that made soils like the Mesopotamian floodplain self-sustaining for millennia. You get the yield. You lose the system. And every season after that, you need more input to get the same output, because the system that once did the work for free has been quietly dismantled. That is not a conspiracy. It is just the economics of dependency. But it costs the soil something it is still paying for. The gardener who understands what Mesopotamian farmers understood is running something the fertilizer bag cannot replicate. Free nitrogen from biological fixation. Minerals drawn from deep soil layers by organisms that predate agriculture itself. Soil structure that improves every season instead of degrading. 3 measurable, zero-cost advantages available since the first farmer turned the first furrow beside the Euphrates. In this video, you are going to discover 8 specific techniques Mesopotamian farmers used to build soil that outperformed anything modern inputs have produced over comparable timescales. By the end, you will not look at a fertilizer bag the same way. More importantly, you will know exactly what to do instead. If this is the kind of content you have been looking for, past the label, into what actually works, hit subscribe now. This channel exists for exactly this. The methods that fed the world before the world had anything to sell you. And if this video changes how you think about your soil, hit the like button. It helps more people find this before they buy another bag they do not need. To understand what Mesopotamian farmers knew, you have to understand where they were farming. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates was not naturally fertile. It was flat, semi-arid, and seasonally extreme. Summer temperatures pushed past 40 degrees. Rainfall was unreliable. The rivers flooded violently. By every modern measure of agricultural suitability, this was difficult land. And yet it fed the first cities in human history, Uruk, Nippur, Babylon, populations of tens of thousands, sustained continuously for millennia. The reason was not luck. It was system. Mesopotamian farmers understood something that took modern soil science until the late 20th century to formally document, that soil fertility is not a property of the ground. It is a property of the relationships inside the ground. They rotated crops in patterns that matched flood cycles. They incorporated organic matter as the primary building material of the soil food web. They left areas fallow in deliberate sequence, not as rest but as reactivation. Archaeological records from Tel Abu Hurera show continuous agricultural production on the same plots for over 4,000 years without the soil collapse that marks modern intensive farming within decades. The post-World War II chemical model entered global farming with a fundamentally different premise. Soil was a medium. Nutrients were inputs. Fertility was something you purchased. Within a generation, the biological intelligence the Mesopotamians had maintained for millennia was replaced by a chemical dependency that has had to increase in volume every decade just to maintain the same yields. What was lost was not a technique. It was an understanding that soil is not the floor of your garden. It is the engine. That is what these 8 methods are going to show you. Method 1. Silt layer composting, the flood intelligence. By 3000 BC, Mesopotamian farmers had developed stratified organic incorporation, layering flood-deposited silt with decomposing crop residue to build what modern soil scientists classify as human-made molly soil, one of the most biologically productive soil types on Earth. Cuneiform tablets from the UR3 period, approximately 2100 BC, contain explicit instructions describing the sequencing of organic matter into flood sediment before planting. They were engineering soil biology 4,000 years before we had language for it. Flood silt carries iron, magnesium, calcium, and trace elements leached from hundreds of miles of upstream geology. Layered with decomposing organic matter, it creates the exact carbon-to-mineral ratio that soil bacteria and fungi need to produce humus, stable organic carbon that holds water, locks nutrients, and builds structure that persists for decades without further input. The result is observable within one season. Soil darkens. Moisture retention improves. Earthworm populations increase because you built the conditions they seek. Compaction reduces. Root penetration deepens. Apply this. After your final harvest, layer 4 inches of compost, 2 inches of mineral sand or fine soil, and 2 inches of straw. Do not dig it in. Leave it to weather over winter. By spring, soil biology will have incorporated it more thoroughly than any fork could. Repeat annually. You do not build fertility by adding chemistry. You build it by building life. The next method is still practiced today in the same region where it began. Method 2. Fallow rotation with nitrogen legumes, the rest that was never rest. Agricultural records from the Sumerian city of Gursu, approximately 2400 BC, document a 2-field rotation in which fallowed land was deliberately sown with leguminous plants, emmer vetch, bitter vetch, chickpeas, not for harvest, but for incorporation. The Code of Hammurabi, 1754 BC, contains provisions governing this rotation. Nitrogen management was important enough to regulate by law. Leguminous plants host rhizobium bacteria in root nodules that fix atmospheric nitrogen, converting inert N2 into biologically available ammonia. A single season of vetch cover can fix 100 to 150 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, at zero cost with zero runoff. A bed that has carried a legume cover crop produces visibly stronger spring growth, darker leaf color, faster establishment, higher early pest resistance. The nitrogen releases slowly as plant matter decomposes, feeding crops across the full growing season. Sow clover, vetch, or field peas into any bed you are resting. At flowering, before seed set, cut at the base and lay flat on the soil surface. Leave roots in the ground. Cost: 1 packet of seed. The most productive thing a field can do is sometimes nothing visible at all. The next method goes deeper, literally, into the subsoil layers your vegetables will never reach alone. Method 3. Deep-rooted dynamic accumulators, the mineral miners. By the Babylonian Empire, circa 600 BC, agricultural texts describe plants grown at field margins specifically for what they did to surrounding soil, root systems descending 2 to 4 meters into subsoil, accessing mineral deposits shallow-rooted crops could never reach, drawing those minerals into leaf tissue. When incorporated, they transferred subsoil mineral wealth into the growing zone. Modern permaculture calls this dynamic accumulation. The Babylonians called it deliberate practice. Topsoil becomes progressively depleted of trace minerals, zinc, iron, manganese, copper, essential for plant enzyme function and disease resistance. Deep-rooted plants like comfort pump these minerals to the surface through their biomass. University of Reading trials showed statistically significant increases in potassium and trace mineral availability within a single growing season of comfort incorporation. Grow comfort at the margins of every bed. Cut 3 to 4 times per season and lay leaves directly on the soil surface, fresh, not composted first. 1. Establish plant mulches for square meters indefinitely. It never needs replacing. It feeds everything around it. Something quietly subversive about a plant that does its most important work underground, in the dark, without acknowledgement, and has been doing so since Babylon. What comes next is the simplest method on this list. So simple you will wonder why you ever did anything else. Method 4. Organic ash amendment, the fire intelligence. Agricultural records from Mesopotamia dating to 4000 BCE show ash from cooking fires and kilns was collected, stored, and applied to growing beds in specific quantities at specific times. Residue analysis at Mesopotamian archaeological sites shows consistent ash incorporation layers, distinguishable from surrounding geology by elevated potassium and calcium carbonate content. Wood ash is 25 to 35% calcium carbonate, the same compound as agricultural lime, raising soil pH and improving phosphorus and potassium availability. It also contains 3 to 7% potassium in immediately plant-available form. No breakdown required. Clubroot, one of the most damaging brassica diseases, is almost entirely suppressed in soils above pH 7.0, which regular ash amendment maintains naturally. Apply 1 to 2 liters of dry ash per square meter in early spring. Work lightly into the top 5 centimeters. Not on acid-loving crops. Not when rain is imminent. Store dry and apply fresh. Every fire you have lit in a hearth produced something your garden could have used. The Mesopotamians knew this before they had writing to record it. We are 4 methods in. For techniques that cost nothing and can be started this weekend with what you already have. But notice something. Not one of these methods involves feeding the plant. Every single one feeds the system around the plant. That is the principle. The 4 methods that follow apply it to problems modern gardeners are still trying to solve with products. Stay with me. Method 5. Water channel micro-irrigation, the Cannet principle. Cuneiform records from the reign of Sargon of Akkad, approximately 2300 BCE, describe a network of named irrigation channels, the earliest documented canal management system in history, maintained by designated water managers ensuring precise, distributed delivery to each field section. Calibrated flow systems, adjusted seasonally and by crop type, designed to deliver water at root level, not surface level. Surface watering causes evaporation before root uptake, soil crusting, and shallow root development towards surface moisture rather than stable subsoil reserves. Subsurface delivery encourages deep roots, consistent moisture without evaporation loss, and reduced fungal disease pressure from wet foliage. Within one season, visibly deeper root systems, 30 to 50% reduction in watering frequency, and markedly lower fungal pressure on foliage. Lay a soaker hose at soil level along growing rows, covered with mulch. For containers, bottom water from a tray. The technology differs. The hydraulic logic is identical to what a Mesopotamian water manager implemented 4,000 years ago. Water does its best work when it is invisible, moving through the dark, drawn upward by roots that have learned to seek it. Method 6. Crop residue green manure, the return principle. Archaeological plant remains from Mesopotamian field sites shows systematic cutting and turning of spent plant material back into soil, documented across Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian periods from roughly 3,500 to 500 BCE. Fields that received their own residue produced more the following season than cleared fields. The Mesopotamians were recycling fertility in a closed loop. Modern gardeners bag it and send it to landfill. Spent plant tissue contains the same nutrients the plant extracted from the soil to build itself. Incorporated while still green and nitrogen-rich, soil microorganisms decompose it within 4 to 8 weeks, releasing nutrients in slow-release biological form across the full growing season. Over 3 to 5 seasons of consistent residue incorporation, soil darkens, aggregates into loose crumbly structure, earthworm populations rise without deliberate introduction. Cut spent crops at the base, leave roots in place, chop aerial growth to 10 centimeter sections, and lay on the soil surface. Cover with thin compost or soil. Within 6 weeks, it will have been incorporated more thoroughly than hand digging achieves. Every harvest removes something. This method is simply the practice of giving it back. Method 7. Deliberate polyculture, the design disorder. Sumerian agricultural texts from approximately 2500 BCE describe mixed cropping systems, grains with legumes, root vegetables alongside leafy crops, aromatic herbs distributed through food-producing beds, not as disorganization but deliberate design. The texts name the combinations. They were intentional. In a monoculture bed, a single pest finds ideal conditions, abundant host material, no competition, no specialized predators. In a polyculture system, the same pest encounters chemical signals from multiple species, physical barriers from different growth habits, and beneficial insect populations from diverse flowering plants. Pest pressure is regulated by the system itself. A University of Wageningen study showed 30 to 40% higher combined biomass production in diverse mixed plantings versus monoculture equivalents on the same area. Plant in clusters rather than rows. Place a nitrogen-fixing legume within every square meter. Distribute one deep-rooted accumulator at bed margins. Allow aromatic herbs to flower among food crops. The result looks less ordered. It performs significantly better. Order is not always the same thing as health. Method 8. Aromatic companion planting, the chemical fence. By the Neo-Babylonian period, approximately 600 BCE, clay tablets describe the planting of coriander, fenugreek, and wild rue alongside crops in specific positional relationships, at intervals that correspond almost precisely to modern integrated pest management recommendations. They arrived at the correct spacing through generations of observation. Modern science took until the 1970s to explain chemically what they already knew practically. Aromatic plants produce volatile organic compounds, terpenes, aldehydes, sulfur-based molecules that disrupt the olfactory navigation of pest insects. Aphids, whiteflies, carrot fly, and cabbage moth locate host plants primarily through scent. In a monoculture bed, that scent is an unobstructed beacon. In a bed interspersed with aromatics, chemical signals overlap and mask each other, olfactory camouflage. Beds with aromatic companions show aphid establishment rates 30 to 50% lower than unplanted equivalents. Carrot fly damage with interplanted rosemary drops over 60%. Plant one aromatic herb per square meter, distributed through the bed, not just at the perimeter. Allow them to flower. Do not deadhead. Do not cut back mid-season. The most sophisticated security systems are the ones you cannot see. The Babylonians built one from coriander and rue and protected their crops for 2 millennia. We replaced it with a spray bottle. Every method in this video has one thing in common. Not that it is ancient. Not that it is free. Not that it outperforms synthetic alternatives in controlled trials, though all of those things are true. What every single one of these 8 methods has in common is this: they work with the system instead of replacing it. They are not interventions. They are conversations between the farmer and the soil, between the plant and the biology beneath it, between the person tending the garden and the intelligence the garden was already running before the first seed went in. Modern gardening chose control over conversation. It looked at the living system in the soil and decided that what could be purchased was superior to what was already there. The system was dismantled. The fungal network severed. The bacterial communities outcompete by chemistry that did the same job faster but left nothing behind. The soil became a substrate, inert, dependent, requiring more input every cycle. Because the system that once produced fertility for free no longer existed. The Mesopotamians did not make that trade. They farmed the same ground for 4,000 years because they understood something we are only now relearning. You cannot buy what biology builds for free. You can only protect it, feed it, and stay out of its way. Think about your own garden. The soil beneath your beds is populated by more living organisms per teaspoon than there are people on Earth. Every one of them is building something. The only question is whether what you do supports that system or suppresses it. Whether your garden, 5 years from now, is more alive than it is today, or less. That is not a gardening question. It is a values question. These were not scientists. They had no laboratories, no peer-reviewed journals. They had observation accumulated across generations, passed from farmer to farmer across millennia. And what that observation produced was a system so biologically intelligent that modern soil science is still reverse engineering it. They got it right for 4,000 years. We replaced it in 4 decades. Your garden does not need more products. It needs more time, more observation, and more trust in the system that has been building fertility since long before anyone had anything to sell you. Which of these 8 methods are you starting with this season? Leave it in the comments right now. I read every single one. Tell me what your soil looks like today. Is it dark and alive, or has it been on the bag for years? Has something in this video made you think differently about what is happening beneath your feet? Tell me. Because the conversation in the comments is where the real lore lives. If this video shifted something, if any of this made you stop and see your garden differently, hit the like button now. It tells me this level of depth is what you came here for, and I will keep going deeper. And if you are the kind of gardener who would rather understand their garden than fight it, who would rather work with 5,000 years of proven intelligence than override it with a bag of chemistry, subscribe. That is exactly who this channel is built for. Methods recovered from the historical record, put back where they belong. Every week. The most productive soil in human history was not purchased. It was understood. Go understand yours.